Tropical Storm Earl has developed to the northeast of the Virgin Islands. Good evening, I'm Mike Naso with this very late Friday night update. It's about 11 p.m. Eastern Time on the tropics. We have a hurricane, the first of the year, Danielle, sitting way up here in the North Atlantic. Not looking as hot as it did earlier, but still expected to perhaps intensify a little bit. And now we have Tropical Storm Earl from that invest area that we tracked all the way from Africa. It struggled all along the way, but it has finally become a tropical storm. And then on the left side of your screen in the Pacific, we have some activity. This is Javier, which is a tropical storm. We have tropical storm advisories for the Baja, and it's expected to move on out. And this area is an invest, but this could become the next storm or even a hurricane and potentially threaten or impact areas there of the Baja and the southern coastline of Mexico on the Pacific side. So we're going to talk about all this. Let's start with the one closest to home, and that's Earl. Well, here he is, Tropical Storm Earl, as of 11 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. Earl was at 18.4 north, 60.3 west, winds of 40 miles an hour. We had aircraft zigzagging all around it, and they determined finally it does have a low-level circulation. And with tropical storm winds of 40, it gets a name. And it's moving west-northwest at 14. It doesn't look like it's going to strengthen very much. A lot of the computer models have kind of backed off. The ones that strengthen it more quickly bring it to the right. So basically, the faster it strengthens, the more it'll probably be on the right edge of this cone. The weaker it is, the more it'll probably be on the left. But given this cone, it's very slow because it's kind of trapped here. It's got a ridge of high pressure to the north that's retrograding to the west through time. And as that high pressure moves west, we're going to see the system slide very slowly underneath it in very weak steering flow and drift towards the northwest and the north and maybe even the northeast. You can see there by Wednesday, we're talking Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Very little motion here. And so it could strengthen, but not to a hurricane, not right now in the forecast. Don't be surprised if later on, like Danielle, it becomes a hurricane further out. If you're in Bermuda, you want to watch it. If you're in the Bahamas and anywhere here, you want to keep an eye just because we're not positive what it's going to do. There's always the chance that it stays weaker and takes a track much further west and we'd have to deal with it down the road. But chances are Earl's not going to do that. You can see the wind field here. It could get close. If it moves further west, some of these winds could get close to some of those islands, so all of them have to be on alert. There are the computer models. This is kind of a broad picture, but you can see most of them want to take it in that area that I scribbled on over the next 5 days. So that's a long time and very little movement. You can see the BAMs shallow, keep it weak, and move it west. The Canadian had been taking it more towards the west, but all of them are indicating a turn there as the ridging moves towards the west and the system slides around and drifts off and then eventually gets caught in the westerly flow and ends up moving out to sea. But again, Bermuda's right here, so even if it does turn, Bermuda might be in the crosshairs of Earl. Now, the key messages for Earl, it is forecast to pass just north of the Leeward Islands, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico over the weekend. Gusty winds in squalls are possible, and heavy rainfall. Limited flash urban and small stream flooding over the Leeward Islands, the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. Rapid rises on rivers possible in Puerto Rico. If it rains heavy there, you get mudslides and stuff, so there's always the threat of that. You can see the wind speed probability here. It could scrape the northern islands and Puerto Rico. There's a look at it on the satellite, and you can see it is trying to develop. It's still sheared. It is not in a good environment. I'll show you the shear map in a little bit, but you could see, notice this wind shear affecting it. See that? Blowing into it, and it's kind of like it's hitting a wall. It's flat there on the left side. That is not favorable for development. You want to see it expand. In contrast to the north, there's Hurricane Danielle, and despite maybe a little upwelling, it has a beautiful environment, very circular, spinning there. It's got a little outflow jet over towards the Azores. It's got another little one here, so it's kind of got this snake-like outflow appearance. In fact, if this were over hotter water, it'd probably be a very strong hurricane. But we're going to move on to Danielle because Danielle is a hurricane, and as of 11 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 3 a.m. GMT, Danielle was at 37.9 north, 43.5 west, winds of 75, so it's a minimal hurricane, a Category 1, stationary, and you can see it's not going to move very much through Tuesday or Wednesday. So again, we have two very slow-moving, weak-sheared storms, although Danielle, like I said, is not as sheared as Earl is. But again, other than shipping interests, we shouldn't have to deal with it. Here's the infrared satellite imagery, and you can see this is very good news. It's not showing any signs of strengthening. The convection is very weak. Like the Hurricane Center said, it looks as though it's upwelling itself a little bit, but again, the outflow is very impressive. Circular outflow jets. Impressive little snake up there in the North Atlantic with Hurricane Danielle. But the shear is a factor mostly with Earl. Earl has that tropical upper tropospheric trough to deal with, and it tongue-ties you, but it also shears hurricanes. Look at that right there on the map. Look at the way that's just getting sliced and diced. Earl's moving right into it, and that's what I showed you on satellite a minute ago. The reason it's flat on its western side there is that it's hitting that tut. However, if it were over the Bahamas, it'd have a very good environment. It would have a good jet there. It would have low shear. Danielle has low shear up here, but as I mentioned, it's over cooler waters that it's sitting and spinning over, so we're not dealing with a very favorable pattern right now in the Atlantic, certainly not for September 2nd or 3rd, Labor Day weekend. On Labor Day weekend, remember 2019, Hurricane Dorian over the Bahamas, 1935, a Category 5 over the Keys. We've had many Labor Day hurricanes. Right now, Danielle is nothing to write home about, neither is Earl, but they're both storms, and look at how fast it changed. Don't let your guard down. I mean, literally, 72 hours ago, people were saying, are we going to have any more storms? And boom, boom, Danielle and Earl. That fast. It happens. Off Africa, we don't have anything. We had our invest here, but that's completely died out, it looks like, even though it showed some life yesterday. A pretty good wave over Africa. And again, some of the ensemble models show a system, the Canadian model in particular, likes to show a hurricane approaching the Lesser Antilles in about a week and a half or so, though this does not shut off. I've seen hurricanes develop off Africa well into September, so don't think that it's going to shut off or that these waves can't stay weak and progress across and then come back later. That's always a possibility too. There's Danielle in the North Atlantic, and there's our newly christened Earl northeast of the Caribbean islands. I want to touch on Javier because we do have a tropical storm watch for the Baja with the expectation that this 50-mile-an-hour storm could get close. It's at 23.1 north, 113.2 west, winds of 50, moving north-northwest at 14. As it moves and bends to the west, it should weaken and not become a hurricane, but these tropical storm winds could clip it just a little bit. And even though the center is expected to remain offshore, heavy rainfall could lead to localized flash flooding in the Baja, and tropical storm conditions are possible through Saturday. That's why that tropical storm watch is in effect. We have another system off Mexico that seems to be a bigger threat. This is a very high chance for development, and it looks like it would continue pretty much straight west-northwest, very close to the coastline, and maybe even impact the Baja in about 5 or 6 days. And so that bears watching if you're out there on the Pacific side. You can see it right there looking much better defined through time. And again, the next name, by the way, this is Javier. This one would be K. And so we'll see if this becomes K, and if it does, she could be a problem for the Mexican coast. It's something to keep an eye on. Finally, I wanted to touch on that typhoon in the Pacific. You can see it coiling up there. It's much weaker than the Category 4 and 5 it was a few days ago, but still very dangerous. It's a Category 1, expected to remain a 1 or a 2, maybe even a 3 again as it heads towards the north, some re-strengthening near the Sea of Japan. It's these islands here it's zeroing in on, and these are islands south of Japan. This is Takatomi, Tarama, Miyakojima, and in particular, Ishigagi. Ishigagi right here is this island, and you can see on that satellite image that the storm is taking dead aim at Ishigagi. So again, if you're in those Japanese islands, heed the local warnings on this very dangerous typhoon. I'm Mike Naso with the latest on the tropics. We'll keep an eye on Earl and Danielle, and I'll talk to you next time.